They laughed when he hammered the last board into place. Cardboard and plastic tarps, they said, recycled insulation from a dumpster, a death trap disguised as a shelter. That winter, temperatures in Detroit plummeted to 18 below zero, the coldest in 40 years. Wind chills reached minus 35. Snow buried the city under 3 feet of accumulation. Tents collapsed, makeshift structures crumbled. People died. But when the storm cleared and volunteers went searching, they found Marcus Webb's shelter still standing, intact. The man inside was alive. Warm, even. They had called it foolish. They had predicted he would not survive the night. They were wrong. What did this homeless man understand that everyone else missed? Marcus Webb wasn't always homeless. For 23 years, he worked as a union carpenter in Detroit, building high-rises and commercial spaces. He was a craftsman. He knew how joists carried weight, how insulation trapped heat, how air needed to move through walls to prevent moisture rot. He understood structures the way some men understand engines. The layoffs came in 2016 when the construction firm lost its largest contract. Marcus was 52, too young for retirement, too old to compete with younger workers willing to take less pay. His savings lasted 6 months. Then the eviction notice. Then the shelter system. Detroit's homeless services were overwhelmed that year. The city had closed 3 shelters due to budget cuts. On any given night, there were beds for maybe 400 people. The actual homeless population exceeded 3,000. Marcus tried the lottery system. Show up at 4 p.m., hope your number got called. Most nights, it did not. He slept in his truck until it got repossessed. Then he tried the tent encampments under the highway overpasses. Winter 2017 taught him what cold really meant. His tent collapsed under heavy snow. He woke at 3 a.m. with ice forming on the inside of the nylon. Frostbite claimed 2 of his toes. The shared warming shelters were worse. Theft, violence, illness spreading through packed rooms. Marcus watched pneumonia kill a man in the bunk next to him. The dead man was 47. By fall 2018, Marcus had tried everything conventional. Nothing worked. By October, weather forecasts were already predicting an unusually harsh winter. The Farmer's Almanac called for record cold. Meteorologists noted the polar vortex patterns forming early. Detroit had not seen temperatures below minus 15 in 2 decades, but the models suggested this year would break that streak. Marcus made his decision in early November. He would build something permanent, something that could withstand the worst winter. The location he chose was a vacant lot on the east side near the old Packard plant. City-owned land, technically, but nobody had touched it in years. Tall grass and debris, no visibility from the main road, close enough to a corner store for supplies, and far enough from foot traffic to avoid immediate attention. He started gathering materials in mid-November, wooden pallets from behind grocery stores. They were throwing them away anyway. Plastic sheeting from construction dumpsters, the heavy mill kind, not the thin stuff. Sheets of foam insulation, some damaged, some just discarded at the end of jobs. Plywood scraps, 2x4s that had split or warped, unusable for professional work but still structurally sound. No one stopped him from taking these things. They were garbage. The design came from memory and observation. Marcus had built dozens of structures. He had also spent 2 winters sleeping rough. He knew what failed. Tents let wind through. Cardboard dissolved in moisture. Metal conducted cold straight through to your bones. Concrete pulled heat from your body all night. He needed multiple layers, dead airspace between them, a small footprint to heat with body warmth alone, low profile to resist wind, water resistance without trapping condensation inside. The first person to mock him was a social worker named Jennifer, who did outreach in the area. She pulled up in her van on November 18th and saw him laying out the pallet foundation. She called out to Marcus, "What are you doing?" Marcus answered, "Building a shelter out of pallets and other materials." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You need to go to the intake center. We can find you a bed." Marcus said, "Most nights you cannot." Jennifer said, "We are opening additional capacity for winter." Marcus said, "Not enough." Jennifer looked at the pile of materials, the torn tarp, the foam pieces. "This is not safe, Marcus. You cannot live in this." Marcus replied, "I lived through last winter in less. Barely." She softened, "I know you know construction, but this is different. You will freeze." He did not argue. He just kept working. The mockery spread. Other people experiencing homelessness came by, assessed the project, and shook their heads. "Man, that is not going to work." One man, Leon, had slept rough for 5 years. He had survived winters in doorways and under cardboard. He stood watching Marcus nail plywood to the pallet frame. "You are wasting your time," Leon said. "Wind is going to rip that apart the first storm." "Maybe," Marcus offered. "Definitely," Leon replied, and then he walked away. "I will remember you, brother," he added. "I will say a prayer." Even people who wanted to help thought he was making a fatal mistake. A minister who ran a Friday soup kitchen stopped by and saw the half-finished structure. "Son, pride is going to kill you," the minister said. "The church has space in the basement during cold snaps." Marcus answered, "Appreciate it. Then use it," the minister insisted. "I will if I need to," Marcus said. The minister looked at the shelter, plywood walls with visible gaps and no apparent insulation, and shook his head. By early December, the structure was taking shape. It was 8 feet long, 5 feet wide, and 4 feet high at the peak. Too small to stand in, just large enough to lie down, sit up, and move around in a crouch. The roof angled sharply to shed snow. It looked ramshackle and uneven, like a child's idea of a fort. On December 10th, a photography student from Wayne State found the lot and took pictures. She posted them to Instagram with a mocking caption and a laughing emoji. The post was shared widely. Comments rolled in. People wrote, "That is sad. Someone needs to help him. Darwinism at work. He is going to die." Marcus saw none of this. He did not own a phone. He just kept working and adding the final layers. The weather reports were getting more urgent. A massive Arctic blast was forming over Canada. Expected arrival. January 12th. Expected duration, at least a week. Expected temperatures, potentially the coldest in 40 years. Marcus sealed the last seam on January 8th, 4 days before the storm. The construction itself violated every principle people expected. Marcus started with the foundation, 6 wooden pallets laid flat, creating a raised platform. Observers were confused. Why waste vertical space lifting the floor? One man said, "The ground is going to freeze anyway. You are just making it colder underneath." Marcus did not explain. The air gap beneath the platform was intentional. The frozen ground would pull heat from anything touching it. The airspace would slow that transfer. The walls went up next. Outer shell first, plywood sheets. Some warped, some water-stained, all salvaged. He secured them to a frame made from 2x4s and pallet wood. The structure looked flimsy, and gaps showed between boards. Wind could blow straight through. A man named Robert, who had been homeless 3 years, stopped by on November 28th and studied the walls. "Brother, I can see daylight through there," he said. "That is not going to hold heat." "It is not finished," Marcus answered. "Even finished, that is too thin," Robert insisted. "You need mass, concrete, brick, something heavy that holds warmth." "I cannot carry concrete. I cannot afford brick," Marcus replied. Robert shook his head. "Then you cannot build a real shelter," he said. Marcus kept working. The insulation layer came next. This was what made people laugh. Foam pieces, pink, blue, white, scavenged from dumpsters behind Home Depot and construction sites. Some pieces were 2 feet square, others were scraps 6 inches wide. Marcus fitted them together like a puzzle, covering every inch of the exterior walls and roof, 2 inches thick everywhere. A woman named Diane, who ran a needle exchange program, drove by on December 2nd. She saw the foam and got out of her car. Diane said, "Marcus, that's not how insulation works. It needs to be inside the walls, not outside." Marcus answered, "This works better." Diane replied, "No, it does not. Foam on the exterior just gets damaged by weather. It will dissolve in rain." Marcus said, "That's why the plastic goes over it." She watched him unroll heavy plastic sheeting, construction grade, 6 mil thick. He wrapped the entire structure, overlapping the seams, taping them with contractor tape. The whole thing looked like a wrapped package. Amateur. Desperate. Diane said quietly, "This is wrong. I know you're trying, but this is backwards. Plastic goes under the siding, not over it. You're trapping moisture." Marcus said, "I'm creating a vapor barrier." Diane said, "You're creating a condensation trap. You will wake up soaked." Marcus secured the plastic and started adding the interior walls, another layer of plywood, creating a second shell inside. Now the structure had 3 distinct layers, with air gaps between them. It looked overbuilt and underbuilt at the same time, too complicated, too crude. On December 5th, a housing inspector named Thomas happened past the lot. He stopped and walked over. Marcus was cutting a small entrance hole. Thomas asked, "You got a permit for this?" Marcus answered, "No." Thomas said, "You know this is city property?" Marcus said, "Yes." Thomas examined the structure. He pulled at the plastic and knocked on the plywood. He said, "This is not up to code. Not even close. No foundation permit. No electrical. I do not even know what code this would fall under." Marcus said, "It is a temporary shelter." Thomas said, "It is a hazard." He pulled out his phone and took pictures. He said, "I should cite this and get it torn down." Marcus waited and said nothing. Thomas looked at him, at the structure, at the vacant lot. He asked, "When is winter coming?" Marcus answered, "Week or so. Big storm mid-January." Thomas put his phone away. He said he had not seen this. "But if you die in there, it is on you," he said. "And if you are still alive in spring, this comes down. Understood?" Marcus said, "Understood." The mockery moved online. The Instagram post from December 10th kept getting shared. By December 15th, it had 40,000 views. Comments multiplied. Online comments included, "Why does he not just go to a shelter? Mental illness, probably." This is what happens when we defund social services. Nature will sort this out. One comment from someone claiming to be an engineer said that design is thermodynamically illiterate. Multiple thin barriers do not equal one thick barrier. He would be warmer in a snow cave. Another comment said foam insulation only works when it is protected and properly installed. Exposed like that, compressed, moisture damaged, it is useless. The weather forecasts intensified. On January 5th, meteorologists confirmed the polar vortex was dipping south. The coldest air in decades would hit the Great Lakes region by January 12th. Expected low in Detroit, -15 to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind chills could reach -40 degrees Fahrenheit. The news stations ran segments on cold preparation, how to protect pipes, how to protect pets, how to recognize frostbite. The homeless shelters issued statements. Capacity would be expanded, but people needed to arrive early. Marcus made a supply run on January 9th. He bought canned soup, crackers, water, batteries. He used money from odd jobs, snow shoveling and moving furniture. At the checkout, the cashier saw his cart and his worn coat and asked, "You okay?" "Storm's coming." He said, "I am ready." The cashier said, "Shelters are open, you know that?" He said, "I know." She bagged his items slowly and said, "Be safe." January 11th, 24 hours before the storm. The temperature was already dropping. 28 degrees at noon, 18 by 6 p.m. The wind picked up. The sky went gray-white. Jennifer, the outreach worker, made one last sweep of the area. She pulled up to the vacant lot at 7 p.m. Marcus's shelter sat silent in the fading light. She got out and called his name. He emerged from inside and said, "I am good." Jennifer said, "Marcus, please, this storm is going to be historic and life-threatening. You need to come to the shelter." He said, "I am staying here." She said, "You will die." He said, "I will not." She said, "You do not know that." He said, "I built this right. I know what I am doing." Jennifer felt her throat tighten. She said, "No one thinks this will work. Not one person. Everyone who has seen this says it is not enough," she said. Marcus looked at her steadily and said, "Everyone has been wrong before." She wanted to argue and wanted to force him, but she could not. She said, "If you change your mind, call. Someone will come get you." He said, "I do not have a phone." She said, "Then walk out. Flag someone down. Do not stay if it is not working." He said, "I will." But they both knew he would not. If he left, he was admitting defeat and admitting everyone was right. Jennifer drove away. She looked in the rearview mirror and saw Marcus crawl back inside and saw the plywood close behind him. That was the last time anyone saw him enter. The storm arrived on schedule. January 12, 2019, the National Weather Service issued a blizzard warning at 6 a.m. By noon, the temperature had dropped to 6 degrees. By 6 p.m., it was -4. By midnight, -12. The wind was the real killer. It was sustained at 30 miles per hour and gusted to 50. Wind chill calculations put the effective temperature at -38 degrees Fahrenheit. Exposure could cause frostbite in under 10 minutes, hypothermia in under 30 minutes. The snow fell at 2 inches per hour. Visibility dropped to near zero. Detroit's shelters filled by 4 p.m. The overflow protocol activated. Churches, community centers, even the convention center opened emergency warming stations. They packed people in, 200 people where capacity was rated for 80. Nobody was turned away if you could get there. Marcus Webb did not go to a shelter. At 5 p.m. on January 12th, he sealed himself inside his structure. He'd stocked supplies the week before: water in plastic jugs, canned food, a camping stove with fuel, blankets, a headlamp, a battery-powered radio. The last person to see him enter was a mail carrier who knew the route. She'd seen Marcus working on the shelter for weeks. She watched him crawl through the small entrance, pull a piece of plywood across the opening, and secure it from inside. She thought about saying something. She did not. The storm intensified overnight. By 3 a.m. on January 13th, the temperature reached -18 degrees. Wind chills hit -42. Snow accumulation passed 18 inches. The power grid strained under demand. Rolling blackouts hit several neighborhoods. In the warming shelters, people huddled under every available blanket. Some centers ran out of coffee. Some ran low on food. The heating systems designed for normal loads struggled to maintain 65 degrees with bodies packed wall to wall. Outside, the city emptied. Buses stopped running. Even the plows pulled back during the worst hours. Anything exposed to the wind became dangerous. Metal, concrete, glass. All of it pulled heat from human skin like a vacuum. Marcus Webb's shelter sat in the vacant lot, buried under 2 feet of snow, silent. The storm lasted 3 days, January 12th through January 15th. During those 72 hours, 2 people froze to death in Detroit. One was a man who'd been drinking, fell asleep in a doorway, and did not wake up. The other was a woman who left a shelter to retrieve something from her tent. She never made it back. On January 16th, the temperature climbed to 12 degrees, still dangerous, but the wind had stopped. The snow had stopped. The emergency was over. Jennifer, the outreach worker, remembered Marcus. She had been working 16-hour shifts, coordinating shelter logistics and doing wellness checks. But on the 16th, during a brief break, she thought about the man who had built the structure out of pallets. She drove to the vacant lot at 10 a.m. The snow was so deep she had to park on the street and walk in. She expected to find nothing, or worse, to find a body. The shelter was still standing, completely intact. The roof had not collapsed under the snow weight. The walls had not been torn apart by the wind. It sat there, low and solid, like it had been engineered for exactly this. Jennifer approached carefully. She called out, "Marcus, you in there?" No response. She got closer. The entrance plywood was still in place. She knocked. "Marcus?" The plywood shifted and moved outward. Marcus Webb's face appeared in the opening. He blinked against the bright snow glare. His beard was longer, his eyes were tired, but he was alive. Jennifer asked if he was okay. He said he was okay. Jennifer said he had been in there 3 days. He said he knew. She stared at him and at the shelter, and she asked how. He crawled out fully, stood up and stretched, his breath fogged in the cold air. He said it was warm in there, well warmish, maybe 50 degrees. Jennifer asked, 50 degrees? In -18 weather? He answered, body heat, insulation, design. Jennifer could not process it. Every assumption she had made about the structure had been wrong. She asked if she could see inside. Marcus gestured that she could. She crawled through the entrance, her eyes adjusted to the dim light from the entrance and a single headlamp hanging inside. The interior was about 32 square feet, tight but organized. Food containers were stacked neatly, water jugs, a sleeping bag laid out on a platform raised off the ground, a camping stove currently off, a few books, a small radio. What struck her was the warmth. It was not comfortable exactly, but it was not life-threatening. In air that had been -18 degrees, this space was genuinely warm enough to survive. She touched the wall and felt multiple layers through the inner surface. She asked what it was. Marcus explained, pallets for the frame and platform, plywood for the outer shell, foam insulation 2 inches thick covering everything, plastic sheeting for a moisture barrier, more plywood inside, and dead air space between the layers. He emphasized insulation. She asked, dead air? He explained that air does not move, it insulates. That is the real trick, multiple layers with air gaps. Heat from his body warms the inside layer, and the air gap stops it from escaping to the next layer. By the time you get to the outside wall, there is almost no heat loss. Jennifer looked at the roof. Same construction, layered. She asked about condensation, noting that breathing puts moisture in the air. He said the plastic sheeting is permeable at the seams, with controlled ventilation. Moisture escapes slowly, not enough to create drafts, but enough to prevent buildup. She examined the entrance. It has a double flap design. You have to move through 2 separate barriers to get in or out. She asked if it was for insulation. He said yes, like an airlock, cold air cannot rush straight in. He crawled back out and stood in the snow. Marcus followed, and they looked at the shelter together. She said it should not work. He said it does. She asked if he knew it would. He said he thought it would, that he had to trust it. Word spread fast. By that evening, a local news crew had gotten the tip. They showed up on January 17th with cameras. Marcus gave them a brief interview, showed them the interior, and explained the design. The story aired that night. The headline read, "Homeless Man Survives Historic Cold Snap in Handmade Shelter." It went regional, then national. Within 48 hours, Marcus Webb's face was on news websites across the country. The reactions online shifted. The mockery disappeared, replaced by curiosity, respect, and some defensiveness from people who had assumed he would die. An architecture professor from the University of Michigan, Dr. Sarah Chin, saw the coverage. She drove to Detroit on January 19th and asked if she could study the structure. Marcus agreed. Dr. Chin spent 2 hours measuring, photographing, and taking thermal images with an infrared camera. Her assessment, published later in a professional journal, was blunt. The shelter demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of thermodynamics, moisture management, and structural load distribution. The design is crude in execution but sound in principle. With the materials available, this may be one of the most efficient human shelters she had examined. The thermal images showed exactly what Marcus had described: heat retention in the core and minimal loss through the walls. The layered construction created an effective R value of approximately R25, comparable to modern home insulation. Dr. Chin noted something else in her report. The builder understood that conventional materials were unavailable. Rather than attempting to replicate standard construction with inferior substitutes, he designed around the properties of what he had. Foam insulation is typically considered a supplementary material, but in this shelter it was primary. Plastic sheeting is usually temporary weatherproofing, but here it served as a crucial vapor barrier. The innovation was not in the materials, it was in understanding how to combine them. Marcus explained his thinking to several interviewers over the following weeks. 23 years as a carpenter taught him how buildings worked. 2 winters homeless taught him how they failed. He said that tents try to do everything with one layer. One piece of fabric as wall, insulation, and moisture barrier cannot do all of that. You need separation, layers, and functions divided up. He had learned from watching. The warming shelters were concrete buildings, and concrete conducts heat. If you sit on a concrete floor, your body heat drains straight into it all night. That is why people in shelters pile cardboard under themselves. He had built the platform in his shelter specifically to create airspace underneath, no direct contact with the ground. He had learned from failure. His tent collapsed in 2017 because of a top-heavy design and poor wind resistance. The shelter he built sat low with an angled roof to shed snow and deflect wind. It was aerodynamic. He had learned from memory. In his carpenter days, he had worked on a walk-in freezer installation for industrial cold storage. The engineers explained how they insulated it, multiple barriers, vapor control, and air gaps. He had remembered. The attention brought offers. A construction firm in Detroit offered Marcus a part-time job working with their design team on affordable housing prototypes. They wanted his perspective on what actually worked. Another company that specialized in disaster relief shelters flew him to their headquarters for consulting, asking how to make emergency housing that people can build themselves from available materials. The city of Detroit, embarrassed by the coverage, expedited housing assistance for Marcus. He was placed in a subsidized apartment by February 1st. It was small, one bedroom, with heat and running water. He moved in, but kept the shelter standing for another month, partly because Dr. Chin was still studying it, and partly because he could not quite believe the apartment was permanent. The shelter became a minor landmark. People came to see it and took pictures. Some brought Marcus food, clothes, and job leads. One man brought building materials and asked Marcus to teach him how to replicate the design and to build one. He said, "I got a brother on the streets. I want to build him one." Marcus spent an afternoon walking him through it, covering measurements, layer order, and ventilation placement. The other man took notes and asked questions. At the end, he shook Marcus's hand and said, "Thank you for not dying, man, for real." By March, the city insisted the shelter come down. They cited unauthorized structure, legal liability, and property concerns. Marcus disassembled it himself over 2 days, carefully. He saved some of the materials. The story faded from news cycles the way stories do, but it left marks. Several cities updated their homeless services protocols, adding language about individual shelter construction and outreach approaches. The disaster relief company Marcus consulted for incorporated some of his design principles into their emergency shelter kits. Architecture students studied the case. A few wrote dissertations on vernacular survival architecture. Marcus Webb still lives in Detroit. He works part-time for the construction firm. He volunteers with homeless outreach, teaching workshops on cold weather survival. He does not talk about the shelter much anymore. When pressed, he shrugs and says he just built something that worked. But the people who watched him nearly die, who mocked his effort, who were proven wrong, remember. Jennifer keeps a photo of the shelter on her desk. It is a reminder, she says, to listen and to not assume. He knew something we did not. We should have asked instead of judging. The structure stood for 70 days. It protected one man through the worst cold in 4 decades. It proved that knowledge does not always look like credentials. Wisdom can live in calloused hands and quiet determination. That desperation and skill, combined, can produce something no one expected. They called it foolish. They predicted failure. They laughed. The shelter stood. Marcus survived. Sometimes the dismissed know exactly what they are doing.